They say some places are meant to be sanctuaries. But in the early hours of April 18, 2016, one church in Midlothian, Texas, became the stage for a nightmare. When students arrived at Creekside Church of Christ that morning, they expected quiet prayer and a fitness class. What they found instead would shatter a community's sense of safety forever. At precisely 4:18 a.m., Terry Missy Bevers entered the church's halls, preparing for her 5 a.m. boot camp class. She moved quietly, lights low, the building's silence stretching around her. Minutes earlier, a figure dressed in tactical gear, helmet, vest marked police, black gloves, had already been inside. The stranger walked the corridors with measured steps, opening doors, breaking glass, and pausing at rooms, as if hunting for something or someone. When the first student arrived around 5 o'clock, they found Missy dead, in a place meant for faith, not fear. Missy was 45, married to Brandon Bevers since 1998, and a devoted mother of 3 daughters. She taught a Camp Gladiator fitness class and often held sessions outside, until that fateful morning when a storm pushed the class indoors. She was known in her community as gentle, energetic, and driven, the kind of person who remembered birthdays, brought extra mats to class, and stayed late to encourage stragglers. Her family lived in Red Oak, Texas, and by all accounts, they were close-knit. Missy had no enemies anyone could name. A thunderstorm was brewing the night before. Because of the weather, Missy told her students the class would move indoors instead of the usual parking lot setting. That one small change may have sealed her fate. Instead of open space and dawn light, she walked into a building where someone was already waiting. The church security cameras began recording the suspect around 3:50 a.m., almost half an hour before Missy arrived. In the footage, the person moves through hallways in full tactical gear. They swing a hammer, pry open doors, and walk with a distinct gait, feet turned outward, steadying themselves against walls. There's no panic, no rush, just slow, purposeful movement. Nothing was stolen. Not the electronics, not the offering box, not Missy's belongings. Whoever came into that church didn't come for money. They came for her. At 4:18 a.m., Missy arrived in her black pickup truck. She carried fitness gear, a blue yoga mat, and her usual smile. She had no idea someone was inside. Within minutes, she was attacked. When her students arrived around 5 a.m., the front door was unlocked. Inside, they found shattered glass and silence. Then they saw her, lying on the floor, her body showing multiple puncture wounds to the head and chest. Nearby was a hammer, possibly the murder weapon. They called 911. The first officers on the scene immediately sealed off the church. There were no signs of forced entry from outside, meaning the killer likely entered through a side door or had a key. Detectives reviewed the security footage frame by frame. The suspect appeared between 5'2" and 5'8" tall, possibly female, though not certain. The helmet and vest concealed everything else. The walk, uneven, slow, deliberate, became the case's most haunting detail. Within days, police released part of the footage to the public, hoping someone would recognize the movement. The video went viral. Millions watched, debating whether the suspect was a man, a woman, a police impersonator, or someone with a limp. But despite the exposure, no one came forward with a confirmed identification. Then came the odd details. A nearby sporting goods store's cameras caught a silver Nissan Altima circling its parking lot around the same time. The car's driver was never identified. For days later, Missy's father-in-law, Randy Bevers, dropped off a stained white shirt at a dry cleaner. The staff reported it to police, believing it was blood. Tests later showed it was from an animal, but suspicion had already begun to spread online. Investigators combed through Missy's phone and found unsettling LinkedIn messages from a man she didn't know. They weren't direct threats, but they were strange. Creepy, her friends said. The messages stopped the day she died. Detectives considered every possibility. A targeted killing, a robbery gone wrong, or a random break-in. But the evidence kept circling back to one thing: planning. The killer had entered long before Missy arrived. They carried tools. They moved like they knew the layout. The footage wasn't just strange, it was deliberate. The suspect's actions, breaking random glass, opening empty doors, might have been misdirection, a way to make it look like a burglary when the real purpose was murder. The autopsy confirmed the wounds were consistent with a hammer or similar object. There were no defensive injuries, suggesting Missy was caught by surprise. Police ruled out sexual assault. It was quick, brutal, intentional. As word spread, the town of Midlothian began to unravel. Churches installed new locks. Fitness classes changed their schedules. In a community built on faith and familiarity, fear had moved in. Hundreds of tips came in, over 3,000 in the first year alone. Everyone was logged, tracked, and investigated. Some led nowhere. Others spiraled into rumor. People studied gait analysis videos online, comparing them to neighbors, coworkers, even family. But none matched. Missy's husband, Brandon, maintained his innocence. He'd been out of town on a fishing trip, his alibi confirmed by GPS records and witnesses. He told reporters he believed the killer was likely random, someone who panicked when Missy walked in. Police didn't agree. Nothing about the scene suggested panic. Forensic analysts studied the footage again and again. The suspect's posture was calm, movement steady, almost rehearsed. One FBI consultant described it as predatory patience. The hammer wasn't swung wildly. It was carried, balanced, as if chosen. Detectives found no fingerprints, no DNA, no shoe prints they could tie to a brand. Even the hammer, believed to be the murder weapon, was a dead end. Whoever did this had erased themselves. Years passed and still no arrest. The police chief called it the most perplexing case of his career. Every year on the anniversary, reporters revisited it, but the footage remained the same. The ghostly walk, the helmeted head turning slightly toward the camera, the slow fade into darkness. The community still holds vigils at Creekside Church. People bring candles, flowers, and signs reading justice for Missy. Her daughters, now adults, continue her fitness legacy, organizing events in her name. The psychological weight of the case lingers. Experts studying the footage describe a rare mix of confidence and control. The suspect didn't behave like someone breaking in. They behaved like someone who believed they belonged there. That makes the case even more chilling. The FBI's forensic gait analyst concluded that the suspect's outward-turned feet may have been exaggerated, possibly a disguise designed to mislead. The longer investigators looked, the more intentional the movements appeared. Still, that question remains unanswered. Who would go to such lengths to disguise themselves, wait nearly half an hour inside a church, and strike with precision, leaving no trace? Missy's last night was ordinary. She'd texted friends about the next class and posted a motivational quote on Facebook, "Be the light someone needs today." Hours later, she was gone. Even now, detectives occasionally revisit the case. Advances in digital enhancement and DNA analysis give small hope that new evidence could emerge. But the church's interior footage, the main clue, remains the same haunting artifact. No face, no sound, just motion. Those who've watched the full, unreleased recording describe it as deeply unsettling. The way the figure stops at doorways, the faint tap of the hammer, the unnatural calm. It's not violence you see, but intent. Missy's story is now part of Texas true crime history, studied in law enforcement seminars as an example of a perfectly executed crime with no clear motive. It's taught alongside discussions of criminal impersonation, digital footprints, and behavioral analysis. In interviews, detectives say the killer likely knew her schedule, her patterns, maybe even her personally. But without DNA, a face, or a direct confession, the case lives in a space between speculation and silence. 8 years later, the church still stands. The boot camp classes continue, though the early morning sessions have been moved to daylight hours. The walls are freshly painted, but some say the air inside still feels heavy. People who drive past at night sometimes slow down, glancing at the church's windows, wondering if the killer ever came back to see what they'd done. The town of Midlothian has learned to live with the question. Every few months, the case trends again on social media. Armchair detectives share theories, Podcasts analyze timelines, and YouTube comments fill with new guesses. But beneath the noise, one truth endures. The person who killed Missy Bevers is still out there. Maybe watching, maybe waiting. Some crimes leave chaos. This one left order, a quiet, methodical void where emotion should have been. That's what makes it so haunting. Because in the end, it wasn't just the loss of a woman, a mother, and a coach. It was the loss of certainty that faith, community, and safety can coexist with evil. Missy's friends say her laughter was contagious. They remember how she'd clap during class when someone finished a tough workout, or how she'd text motivation before dawn. "You got this." That morning, she showed up to inspire others and met someone who came to destroy. To this day, the Creekside Church security footage remains one of the most watched pieces of unsolved crime evidence online. Every time someone presses play, that same figure in black walks again, down the hallway, past the camera, out of sight. And still, the world doesn't know their name. This is Crime Arcane, where every story leaves a scar.